Hi everyone, I'm in this NRSV New Revised Standard Version, which is new to me, which I'm reading, and I decided when I got it that after reading the To the Reader, I would read it, because I'm someone I like to read the preface to all the Bibles. Gives you a really good understanding of what's what it means, what it's about, give you an idea of what the Bible's about, this version. So I think it's about 5.5 pages. I should be able to read this right now in reasonable time. Excuse me. Okay, so I'll usually read it fairly fast so I can get through it without being too long. This preface is addressed to you by the Committee of Translators who wish to explain as briefly as possible the origin and character of our work. The publication of our revision is yet another step in the long continual process of making the Bible available in the form of English language that is most widely current in our day. To summarise in a single sentence, the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible is an authorised revision of the Revised Standard Version published in 1952, which was a revision of the American Standard Version published in 1901, which in turn embodied earlier revisions of the King James Version published in 1611. In the course of time, the King James Version came to be regarded as, in quotes, the authorised version. With good reason, it has been termed, in quotes again, the noblest monument of English prose, end of quotes, and it has entered, as no other book has, into the making of the personal character and the public institutions of the English-speaking peoples. We owe to it an incalculable debt. Yet the King James Version has serious defects. By the middle of the 19th century, the development of biblical studies and the discovery of many biblical manuscripts, more ancient than those on which the King James Version was based, made it apparent that these defects were so many as to be called for revision. The task was begun by authority of the Church of England in 1870. And it says British in brackets. The revised version of the Bible was published in 1881 to 1885, and the American Standard Version, it's a variant embodying the preferences of the American scholars associated with the work, was published, as was mentioned above, in 1901. In 1928, the copyright of the latter was acquired by the International Council of Religious Education and thus passed into the ownership of the Churches of the United States. That's in capitals, Churches of the United States, and Canada were associated in this council through their boards of education and publication. The council appointed a committee of scholars to have charge of the text of the American Standard Version and to undertake inquiry concerning the need for further revision. After studying the questions whether or not revision should be undertaken, and if so, what its nature and extent should be, in 1937 the Council authorised a revision. The scholars who served as members of the committee worked in two sections, one dealing with the Old Testament and one with the New Testament. In 1946 the Revised Standard Version of the New Testament was published. The publication of the Revised Standard Version of the Bible containing the Old and New Testaments took place on September 30, 1952. A translation of the apocryphal / deuterocanonical books of the Old Testament followed in 1957. In 1977, this collection was issued in an expanded edition containing 3 additional texts received by, is that one page? Eastern Orthodox communions. Let me hope that's, yep, one page. Eastern Orthodox communions, and in brackets 3 and 4 Maccabees and Psalm 151. into brackets. Thereafter, the Revised Standard Version gained the distinction of being officially authorised for use by all major Christian churches: Protestant, Anglican, Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. The Revised Standard Version Bible Committee is a continuing body comprising about 30 members, both men and women. Ecumenical in representation, it includes scholars affiliated with various Protestant denominations, as well as several Roman Catholic members, an Eastern Orthodox member and a Jewish member who serves in the Old Testament section. For a period of time, the committee included several members from Canada and from England. Because no translation of the Bible is perfect or is acceptable to all groups of readers, and because discoveries of older manuscripts and further investigation of linguistic features of the text continue to become available, renderings of the Bible have proliferated. During the years following the publication of the Revised Standard Version, 26 other English translations and revisions of the Bible were produced by committees and by individual scholars, not to mention 25 other translations and revisions of the New Testament alone. One of the latter was the second edition of the NRSV New Testament, issued in 1971, 25 years after its initial publication. Following the publication of the NRSV Old Testament in 1952, significant advances were made in the discovery and interpretation of documents in Semitic languages related to Hebrew. In addition to the information that had become available in the 1940s from the Dead Sea texts of Isaiah and Habakkuk, subsequent acquisitions from the same area brought to light many other early copies of all the books of the Hebrew Scriptures, in brackets except Esther, in brackets, though most of these copies are fragmentary. During the same period, early Greek manuscript copies of books in the New Testament also became available. In order to take these discoveries into account, along with recent studies of documents in Semitic languages related to Hebrew, in 1974 the Policies Committee of the Revised Standard Version, which is a standing committee of the National Council of the Churches of Christ in the USA, authorized the preparation of a revision of the entire RSV Bible. For the Old Testament, the committee has made use of the Biblia Hebraica, Stuttgart, Ensia, 1977, EdSec Emendata 1983, and that was in brackets. This is an edition of the Hebrew and Aramaic text as current early in the Christian era, and fixed by Jewish scholars, brackets the Masoretes, in brackets, of the 6th to the 9th centuries. The vowel signs which were added by the Masoretes are accepted in the main, but where a more probable and convincing reading can be obtained by assuming different vowels, this has been done. No notes are given in such cases because the vowel points are less ancient and reliable than the consonants. When an alternative reading given by the Masoretes is translated in a footnote, this is identified by the words "another reading is." Departures from the consonantal text of the best manuscripts have been made only where it seems clear that errors in copying had been made before the text was standardized. Most of the corrections adopted are based on the ancient versions, and in brackets it says translations into Greek, Aramaic, Syriac and Latin, in brackets, which were made prior to the time of the work of the Masoretes, and which therefore may reflect earlier forms of the Hebrew text. In such instances, a footnote specifies the version or versions from which the correction has been derived, and also gives a translation of the Masoretic text. Where it was deemed appropriate to do so, information is supplied in footnotes from subsidiary Jewish traditions concerning other textual readings, and in brackets emendations of the scribes brackets. These are identified in the footnotes as ancient Heb tradition. Occasionally it is evident that the text has suffered in transmission and that none of the versions provides a satisfactory restoration. Here we can only follow the best judgment of competent scholars as the most probable reconstruction of the original text. Such reconstructions are indicated in footnotes by the abbreviation capital CN, and in brackets correction, that's what it means, and a translation of the Masoretic text is added. For the apocryphal Deuterocanonical books of the Old Testament, the committee has made use of a number of texts. For most of these books, the basic Greek text from which the present translation was made is the edition of the Septuagint, prepared by Alfred Rahlfs and published by the Württemberg Bible Society, Stuttgart, 1935. For several of the books of the more recently published individual volumes of the Göttingen Septuagint project were utilised. For the Book of Tobit, it was decided to follow the form of the Greek text found in Codex Sinaiticus, and brackets it says supported as it was by evidence from the Qumran, and brackets, where this text is defective. It was supplemented and corrected by other Greek manuscripts. For the three additions to Daniel, in the brackets, namely Susanna, the Prayer of Azariah, and the Azariah and the Song of the Three Jews, and Bel and the Dragon, in the brackets, the committee continued to use the Greek version attributed to Theodoton. This is brackets, the so-called Theodotian Daniel, in brackets. Oh, sorry, going as fast as I can here. Some few curly words. In translation, Ecclesiasticus Sirach, while constant reference was made to the Hebrew fragments of a large portion of this book, brackets, those discovered at Qumran and Masada, as well as those recovered from the Cairo Geniza, end of brackets. The committee generally followed the Greek text, more brackets, including verse numbers, brackets, published by Joseph Ziegler and the Göttingen Septuagint, 1965. But in many places the committee has translated the Hebrew text when this provides a reading that is clearly superior to the Greek. The Syriac and Latin versions were also consulted throughout and occasionally adopted. The basic text adopted in rendering to Esdras, and the Latin version given in Biblia Sacra, edited by Robert Weber, Stuttgart, 1971. Anderson's. This was supplemented by consulting the Latin text as edited by R.L. Bensley, 1895, and Bruno Violet, 1910, as well as by taking into account the several Oriental versions of two Esdras, namely the Syriac, Ethiopic, Arabic, two forms referred to as Arabic 1 and Arabic 1 and Arabic 2. Armenian and Georgian versions and Georgian versions. Finally, since the additions to the Book of Esther are disjointed and quite unintelligible as they stand in most editions of the Apocrypha, we have provided them with their original context by translating the whole Greek version of Esther from Robert Hanhart's Göttingen edition, 1983. For the New Testament of the committee, might have a rest soon. Might have a rest now. I need a cup of tea. I'm back in a minute. Thanks for listening. I'll keep going in 2 minutes.